Hi, this is to introduce you about questionnaire design for your final year project. I'd like to state a disclaimer that there's really a lot of knowledge pertaining questionnaire design, but this set of lecture will focus on the basics that you can apply in your final year project. So when is a questionnaire appropriate for your FYP? In most cases, your supervisor would have already told you what methods the team will use to collect data. For questionnaire, here are some of the reasons. You already have a clear idea what you want to find out. Suppose you're doing an analysis or you're doing an event evaluation. Chances are you're looking at those few points to evaluate your event. And with that, you can easily craft out the questions and administer it. However, if you're looking at a more exploratory type of study, exploring topics that have hardly been looked into, it's much harder because when you craft the questions or the items in the questionnaire, you may miss out a lot of points. So if the situation is such, probably a questionnaire is not suitable. Maybe a qualitative interview may be more appropriate. Okay, the second reason why you would use your questionnaire is that your respondent is generally literate. For some projects like the DHSM projects, you're dealing with non-English speakers, and a lot of time you may have to plan more time to administer the questionnaire by doing it one-to-one as compared to say you at class time administering a Google form to RP student. We'll cover more about how to collect data in a separate lecture. You're seeking quantifiable data and you hope to generalize the data collected to a larger population. So for example, if you have collected a sample from students from SHL and the data collected, you may be able to generalize it and say that represents the whole SHL population. In FYP, there are usually two modes. First, you're using existing questionnaire, or if not, you are developing your own question. So this is an example of a questionnaire that was used. This questionnaire has been used quite commonly to talk about recreational experience by a researcher, and there have been work done to look into the reliability and validity of the study, this set of questionnaire. So if you are the one implementing this, you are likely to just use the questionnaire and administer it. Some questionnaires are open for people to use. Some you may have to write in for written permission. Now, in the case of designing your questionnaire, this is how it can look like for the past FYP students. Like in this case, this is a DHSM paper survey. It looks simple, but there's actually a lot of data points collected. Survey is only one of them. So it's a 5-question. Looks pretty simple. And there are also slightly more complicated one, like this one that was done by the Diploma in Sports and Leisure Management, which talk about the volunteer satisfaction. So I've shown you the range of questionnaire that are commonly used in SHL FYP. And why do you need to do that? Because you need to be accurate. When your data collector is accurate, it reduces measurement errors. Let's do a quick exercise here. What do you think about this question? Is eating at the e-canteen, sorry for a typo, a good experience? Yes? No? Well, the problem is good experience is actually quite ambiguous. And with that, say you have 50 respondents, all 50 may interpret this question quite differently. Is it good because of pricing, taste, which particular store, the ambience, the service? And when you set it as yes or no, what happens to those people who thought it's so-so, neutral, or to a certain extent? With that, we are not able to capture really our understanding of how the students see their eating experience at E1 canteen. Tricky. So I'd like to remind you only have one chance. So make sure you put in a lot of effort in ensuring your questionnaire is good, and let's roll it out. The process will be of such. Let's do a quick weather check. Have you clarified and confirmed your FYP research aim? Have you done your literature review to understand the information needed, the knowledge needed? At this stage, probably you're still reading. And after being sure of the aim and reading up, you are probably able to design a question and structure the question. In other words, the order, the pages, the cover page. You are able to pilot, then you pilot the questionnaire. In other words, you pre-test it, you test it on a group of people to see whether they understood your questionnaire or any way to make it clearer. You revise it, and then you administer it to the targeted sample. After data collection, you tabulate it and then you analyze it for your final report. So these are the 9 steps in your questionnaire design, and right down to the analysis. Well, I would like to emphasize that the principle about questionnaire design is about the respondent. So it's really about whether they understand your question, they are willing to answer your question, and they can answer your question. So we're now focused on understanding. Will all of them understand the question the same way? Here are some tips. Now the first one is, how specific do you want your questions to be? If you set it as in a very broad way, do you buy the sports team's merchandise? Yes or no? As compared to, do you buy the following items? The results eventually will look like, perhaps like this. Which one is more specific? Well, clearly it's the one on the right. And what helps is that with more information, you may be able to do more analysis based on the title or the aim of your project. However, this is not cast in stone. You may need to have a broad question first, followed by a more detailed question later. It really all spells down to what you want to achieve from your questionnaire. Second tip, be clear. Well, this is an example of something that's not too clear, and let's make it more specific. And the markers of a good display could be attractiveness, accessibility. So try to get down to all this rather than something vague like good, well. Okay. Tip number 3, please be neutral. This statement tends to lean towards the positive. I may be feeling a little bit of a pressure to say, yeah, I bought the sports merchandise. Have you bought the sports team's jersey that are popular? There's also a bit of a lean towards a socially desirable answer. So try to revise it by removing all these elements. Okay, be simple. Try to reduce jargons. In this case, I'm guessing that you probably don't understand this question, or maybe you do. But truly, if you have used a simpler term, perhaps more people will understand it. But it all depends on your target group. Presumably, this question is meant for people who buy sport merchandise. If you are interviewing practitioners, say advanced instructors in a particular sporting field or outdoor field, you may want to use more technical terms that they understand. So it's about tailoring the language. Okay, we avoid loading the questions with some certain emotions like this. Well, chances are I would want to be seen as a loyal fan. So you can make it more neutral. Another concern is try not to overstate your statements and make it very exaggerated in this case. And just plainly state the way it is. Let's avoid all the double barrel questions. What do we mean by double barrel? Look at this statement. Do you buy the jersey because of both reasons? Or is it a case of for some people, they buy the jersey because it's reasonable, but not necessarily because it's attractive. With that, you lump these two factors together. It's very hard for analysis towards at the end of the project. So break them down into two parts instead. Okay, ask questions that are relevant to the respondent. Remember, the principle is all about the respondent. So if you ask a question of how all fans will feel, that's really not the point. The point is really about asking the particular respondent's own perspective. We try not to tax the memory of the respondent. Like if you ask how many jerseys you have bought in your life, that's pretty taxing, and it can turn off the respondent. So set a reasonable timeline and ask the same question. Okay. And lastly, this is about the order of the question. Avoid leading questions. So your originally is first question, why does everyone prefers jersey? Followed by the second question, which sports merchandise do you prefer? So would you like to guess what's the bias towards? Yes, there is the lean towards citing jersey because of the way the questions are ordered. So as a revision, perhaps you can ask the first question in a later part, or just drop it. So you can just focus on this one instead. Alright, so with that, we have covered all the tips about designing the question. Please refer to the second part of lecture to understand more about how do we encourage willingness to answer your question, as well as the ability of the respondent to answer your questions too.